giving you a voice.
Making it loud our own way.
Welcome to the fun.
So last week we had an opportunity to sit down with the MC of Chezy Champs and self-proclaimed world-class team baking extraordinaire, Pat Fairbank.
Hold on, is that true, Kevin? Is he really the baking champion of 254?
Oh yeah, easily.
What's the best thing that he's baked for you guys?
Oh, he's baked so much stuff for us at this point. I don't even know what's the best.
He's just baked a
every
lot.
time. Yeah, it's just new stuff every time, and it's always so good.
Fair enough.
I think maybe he should host. We should start a baking show, and he can help us all become better bakers. Because 254 inspires us.
As long as we're not tasting different types of ketchup or anything like that on air, I'm fine with that.
As long as you don't put nuts in your brownie, or whatever the weird thing that JVN put in it.
Walnuts and brownies are delicious.
Fair enough.
But we're not going to get in that argument today. It is not for today.
Yes.
We're going to check in with our guest, Kevin. So, Kevin, what makes Chezy Champ, because it's such a big deal, such a big event, what makes it special? What makes it so intense? Why do you love it?
Yeah, so one of the reasons I love it is we actually get to play with all the great California teams. It's so hard these days to get into events with every single good California team. We are only an hour and 50 minutes away from Citrus, and we haven't seen them in an official event since 2016. Wow. So this is a really good opportunity to play with the best of California. And then this year especially was not just the best of California, with the best of Arizona, best of PNW, minus just I think only two of the PNW powerhouses weren't able to make it, but a ton showed up. So overall, from a competition standpoint, Chezy Champs usually brings out a lot of good robots. It's a small event. It's not like IRI where you have 75 amazing teams. You only get about 40 at Chezy Champs, but it makes it much more intense because you have some really fast match turnarounds. You don't really get too much time to do stuff, but it's still fairly relaxed despite being a competitive off season. So that's why I think it's a really good time. You get to see everyone.
Yeah, Chezy Champs, we had a lot of debate about this last week in regards to IRI and Chezy Champs, both fantastic events. Absolutely, and I mean, despite the excitement that happened right at the end, I mean, the event itself was absolutely amazing. We're going to talk a bit about Chezy Champs in case you didn't get to catch all of it, and of course, we will be talking about how it ended in the finals coming up a little bit later. But Kevin, I got to ask you. Last week when we talked to Pat, a question from our audience came up about 254's undefeated streak. Now, the paraphrase what Pat said, he said as far as he's concerned, he isn't really concerned about an off-season event, especially with new students, which I hope you can kind of talk about a little bit. But with you, the drive coach, being behind the glass, I mean, come on, there's got to be this little inkling inside of you. It's we got to keep the streak, right? It's got to keep going. Or are you not concerned with that at all?
For me personally, I was not particularly concerned. As far we have new drivers. I felt the streak left with our old drivers. They're the ones that they're the ones that made it happen. It wasn't just the drivers. We had a new programming students too, and because our head programmer graduated also. So it's the streak really left with our driver, operator, and head programmer who all graduated. They're the ones that made it happen.
Can you talk about that a little bit? What programming and that sort of thing, what impact did that programmer have for your robot this year?
So our lead programmer, which a lot of people might know, who Mario, because his name is on a ton of the commits. He's one of the smartest students we've ever had, if not the smartest student in terms of programming. He pretty much did everything for auto. Our programming mentors this year were much more hands-off because they couldn't actually be at the lab. So we only had one programming mentor that could consistently make it and help out Mario all the time, but really it came down to just him programming autos, spending hours and hours at the lab. I mean, I've had to kick him out of the lab almost every build we had towards the end of last season was dude, you need to go home. Your parents are not going to let you come back ever again.
I need to work tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was really dedicated, and I mean, one of my favorite story with him this year was our 3-cube switch auto. He showed up right before, I think it was SVR is when we pulled it out, and he showed up the 2 days before, and he's like, "Hey, Kevin, come check this out. I'm like trying to tune this." He runs it a couple times. It doesn't really work, but then after like only like 4 or 5 attempts, he gets it all put together. And then I found out later at the event from the other students is that he wrote that auto during English class instead of paying attention. So he was a great kid, and he's
well disciplined too, apparently.
Yeah,
We've all been there.
Yeah, and somehow he was like, everyone had not so great grades at one point during the season when the robot fell behind, but he still managed to have just like a perfect GPA. Don't really understand what happened there.
Must be nice.
Yeah. So yeah, his loss was pretty big. Plus, our 2 replacement programmers were actually helping running an event. So if anything went wrong during auto at Chezy Champs, they had maybe one of them was a scorekeeper and the other one was an AV guy. So they had maybe like 5 minutes between matches to help out, if at all. So luckily, we didn't need too much help from them during the event. But yeah, we're really not running on all cylinders for Chezy.
Well, let's talk about the rest of that in regards to drive team wise. So you mentioned that was it one driver, both drivers were gone, and then can you talk about the kind of the, like what did you do to prepare that drive team for Chezy Champs, if anything?
Yeah, so our driver and operator both graduated. So for Chezy, he was a brand new driver and operator, and the driver was actually our old human player, so we had to slot someone else into the human player. So all the drive team brand new roles. We selected our driver, I'm going to say about a month and a half ago. Operator, only 3 weeks ago. We had very ambitious plans with open tryouts, but due to the fact we have this off-season robot, it was the summer, we actually didn't get any of the drive practice that we wanted to get in. The robots kept breaking, and we didn't get as much as we would have liked, but they still put in a lot of hours, and I think it really showed because to me, they were still really good. I wouldn't say there was a drop off for sure, especially with a lot of like the random scenarios that come up during this game since it's such a dynamic game. But for the most part, they knocked it out of the park, and the time they put in really reflected in their performance at Chezy.
Absolutely. Thank you to all of our co-executive producers, keeping fun loud, live, and independent. Pledge your support. Go to patreon.com/funfrc.